If a guy is doing these 8 things, he may already be thinking about you far more than you realize, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Everything you think about a guy wanting you may be completely backwards. Here's the part that might surprise you. When a guy really wants you, when he seriously can't get you out of his mind, he doesn't always become more confident. He doesn't suddenly become smooth, calm, and perfectly sure of himself. Sometimes he gets weird. He becomes a little scattered. He may seem nervous around you. He may act differently than he normally does. Not because he doesn't know whether he likes you, but because his feelings are affecting him more than he expected. And that is something most people never talk about when it comes to attraction. A guy who is genuinely becoming attached to someone isn't always doing the obvious things. He's not necessarily being extra flirty every second. He's not always trying to impress you with expensive plans or dramatic gestures. He may not make everything clear and easy to understand. Instead, he can start doing small, unusual things that seem meaningless until you understand what is happening inside his mind. Tiny behaviors he may not even realize he's showing. Little changes that reveal you've started taking up more space in his thoughts than he planned. And once you notice these details, you may start seeing the entire situation differently. Most women assume that when a guy really wants them, he'll simply show it. He'll chase harder, he'll try more, he'll become predictable, he'll make his intentions obvious. But real attraction doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, the stronger the feelings become, the more complicated his behavior can look from the outside. A guy who is developing serious interest may become uncertain, distracted, or even inconsistent. He may send mixed signals, not necessarily because he's trying to play some clever game, but because he's trying to understand his own reaction. Think about the way people describe the moment they realized they really cared about someone. They rarely say, "I made a logical decision to pursue her more." Instead, they say things like, "I don't know what happened," or "She just stayed on my mind," or "I kept thinking about her when I didn't even want to." That's the important part. Sometimes attraction isn't something a person carefully decides. It grows quietly, then suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. And when that happens, behavior can change before words ever catch up. The 8 signs I'm about to break down are not the typical things you've been told to watch for. They aren't all romantic. They aren't always obvious. Some may even make you wonder if he's losing interest. But stay with me, because this is where the picture starts to make sense. These signs can reveal what may be happening beneath the surface when a guy is becoming much more interested than he expected. So if you're confused about someone right now, if his actions don't completely match what you thought attraction was supposed to look like, or if one day he seems completely focused on you and the next day he suddenly acts strange, don't rush to conclusions. There may be more happening beneath the surface, but remember, no single behavior proves that someone is obsessed with you. Context matters. Consistency matters. Most importantly, genuine interest should eventually show itself through respect, effort, communication, and actions that make you feel secure rather than constantly confused. Still, there are subtle patterns worth noticing. These 8 signs aren't about what he says when he's trying to impress you. They're about the little things that can slip through when someone is becoming more emotionally invested than he expected. And the first sign is one that can easily be misunderstood. He starts becoming unusually aware of you. He notices small things. He remembers details you mention casually. He notices changes in your mood, your routine, your tone, or even the way you respond to something. You may think he's simply paying attention, but sometimes that attention reveals just how much mental space you've started occupying. Before we get into all 8 signs, let's talk about what it actually means when someone becomes intensely focused on another person, because this is where many people get it wrong. Being interested in someone is not the same as simply finding them attractive. It isn't just thinking they're beautiful or enjoying their company. It's when that person begins taking up unexpected space in your thoughts. You start remembering conversations when you're doing something completely unrelated. A small moment replays in your head. Something they said suddenly makes you smile hours later. You find yourself wondering what they're doing, what they meant, or when you'll see them again. That is different from casual attraction, And when a guy reaches that point, he may not immediately know what to do with those feelings. Most guys can handle simple attraction. They know how to flirt. They know how to ask someone out. They know how to keep things light. They can enjoy a connection without allowing it to disrupt their normal routine. But when someone starts becoming genuinely important, that's different. The feelings can become harder to organize. Suddenly, he may find himself thinking about you at random times, remembering tiny details, checking his phone more often, or becoming unusually careful about how he comes across. And here's where it gets interesting. He may not even realize how obvious some of these changes are. You may notice them before he does. The second sign is that he starts finding little reasons to stay connected. It may not always look like a big romantic move. Sometimes it's incredibly small. He sends you something that reminded him of a conversation you had. He asks a question he probably could have answered himself. He finds a reason to continue a conversation that could have naturally ended. He brings up something you mentioned days ago. He doesn't necessarily say, "I wanted an excuse to talk to you." Instead, the excuse appears naturally. And that's what makes it interesting. When someone is becoming highly interested, maintaining a connection can become rewarding in itself. He may not need a major reason to reach out. The interaction becomes the reason. You might notice that conversations stretch longer than necessary. One topic turns into another, then another. Suddenly, an exchange that should have lasted 5 minutes has gone on for an hour. That doesn't automatically mean obsession, of course. Some people are naturally social. But when this behavior appears alongside other signs, it can tell you something important. He is choosing to keep you present in his day. And sometimes the strongest clue isn't how often someone talks to you, it's how consistently they create small opportunities to remain connected. The third sign is that he becomes slightly nervous or awkward around you, especially if he normally seems confident with everyone else. This one confuses people because they assume attraction should make someone more confident. But strong feelings can do the opposite. When the outcome suddenly matters, a person can become more self-conscious. He may overthink what to say. He may start a sentence, stop, then say something completely different. He may laugh at moments that aren't particularly funny. He may seem unusually quiet, then suddenly become talkative. He might check your reaction after making a joke. He may become more aware of his appearance or how he is behaving. Again, none of these things alone proves anything. But if someone who is normally relaxed becomes noticeably more careful around you, there may be a reason. The simple explanation is that your opinion has started carrying more weight for him. He cares more about how you see him. And when that happens, even a confident person can become a little awkward. That's why you shouldn't always interpret nervousness as disinterest. Sometimes nervousness appears precisely because the person cares about the outcome. The key is to look at the bigger pattern. Does he still make an effort? Does he respect your boundaries? Does he consistently look for opportunities to connect? If yes, the nervousness may simply be part of the emotional pressure he's feeling. The fourth sign is that he remembers things you didn't expect him to remember. This can be one of the most revealing details because people naturally remember what they consider important. You may casually mention a place you want to visit, a food you like, a difficult day you had, a project you're working on, or some tiny story from your childhood. Weeks later, he brings it up. You might even forget that you told him. He doesn't. That's not necessarily proof of obsession, but it does show that he was listening and that the information stayed with him. When someone becomes more emotionally interested, details can become attached to the person in their mind. Your stories don't feel like random information anymore. They become part of the picture he has of you. And sometimes you'll see this through surprisingly small things. He remembers your usual order. He remembers what makes you laugh. He remembers the song you mentioned. He remembers that you had something important happening on a certain day and asks how it went. These moments matter because they're often not performed for attention. They're simply stored. And when someone remembers what you thought they would forget, it can reveal that you made more of an impression than you realized. Keep watching because the next signs become even more subtle. The fifth sign is that his behavior around other people changes when you're present. Maybe he becomes more attentive. Maybe he suddenly becomes more careful with his words. Maybe he wants you to notice something he normally wouldn't care about showing. He might become slightly more playful, more serious, or more engaged. Sometimes he may even try to appear unaffected while clearly being more aware of you than everyone else. This is where people can misread the situation. They see him talking normally to everyone else, then notice that something shifts when you enter the room. That shift can be meaningful. Human behavior often changes when someone important enters the environment. We become more conscious of ourselves. We adjust our posture. We pay closer attention. We monitor reactions. We become more aware of what we're saying. So don't focus only on whether he's openly flirting. Look at whether his entire level of awareness changes when you're around. Does he notice when you arrive? Does he seem more engaged when you speak? Does he remember your reactions? Does he look for your response after saying something? These are subtle signs, but together they can create a much clearer picture. And if you're noticing several of these patterns at once, don't dismiss them just because they're not dramatic. The sixth sign is that he starts trying to understand you rather than simply impress you. This is a major difference. Casual attraction often focuses on appearance, chemistry, and immediate excitement. Deeper interest starts becoming curious about the person underneath. He wants to know how you think. He asks about your opinions. He remembers your values. He wants to understand what makes you happy, what frustrates you, what you're working toward, and what matters to you. He may ask questions that don't have an obvious purpose except wanting to know you better. That's important because genuine interest usually becomes more personal over time. Instead of only asking, "What are you doing?" he starts asking, "Why do you think that way?" Instead of only talking about what happened today, he becomes interested in your experiences and perspective. He may remember your answers and bring them into later conversations. That's not simply trying to get your attention, it's learning your world. And when someone starts doing that consistently, it can mean the connection has moved beyond surface level curiosity. He isn't just interested in having your attention, he's becoming interested in understanding who you are. That is a much stronger signal than a compliment or a flashy gesture. The seventh sign is that he sometimes pulls back slightly after getting closer. Now this is the sign that confuses people the most. One moment, everything feels intense. He's talking more, opening up, showing interest, and then suddenly he becomes quieter. You start wondering what happened. Did he lose interest? Did you do something wrong? Is he trying to play games? Maybe, but there are other possibilities too. Sometimes people step back when they realize their feelings are becoming stronger than they expected. They need time to process what they're feeling. They may become aware that the situation suddenly matters more than it did before. However, this is where you need to be careful. Do not turn every hot and cold pattern into proof of hidden feelings. Consistent disappearing, disrespect, manipulation, or emotional games should not be romanticized. Real interest still requires healthy behavior. A temporary moment of uncertainty is different from a repeated pattern of making you anxious. Look at what happens after the distance. Does he come back with genuine effort? Does he communicate? Does he become more consistent? Or does he simply disappear and return whenever it's convenient? The difference matters. Never use the idea of hidden attraction to excuse behavior that repeatedly hurts or confuses you. And now we get to the eighth sign, the one that ties everything together. He starts making space for you in his real life, not just in conversation, not just when he's bored, not just when it's convenient. His actions begin creating room for you. He remembers what matters to you. He follows through. He makes plans and keeps them. He considers your schedule. He introduces you to parts of his world that actually matter. He begins treating the connection as something worth investing in. This is where attraction becomes meaningful. Because thoughts are private, feelings are complicated, and chemistry can be temporary. But consistent effort is visible. A guy can think about you all day and still not be ready for a healthy relationship. He can be fascinated by you and still not know how to show up properly. That's why the strongest sign isn't how intensely he looks at you or how nervous he becomes. It's whether his behavior eventually moves toward consistency, respect, honesty, and real effort. If he genuinely wants you in his life, over time, his actions should make that clearer rather than leaving you permanently guessing. And that is the part many people miss. So when you look at all 8 signs together, don't focus on one isolated moment. Look for a pattern. Does he remember details? Does he create reasons to stay connected? Does he become more self-conscious around you? Does he notice your reactions? Does he want to understand you? Does he sometimes need space to process his feelings? And most importantly, does he eventually turn that interest into consistent action? That's the real difference between someone who is simply fascinated and someone who is genuinely invested. You don't need to chase every strange behavior and turn it into a secret message. You don't need to analyze every text or stare at every change in his mood. Let his overall behavior tell you the story. Because when someone truly values you, you should not have to spend forever decoding them. There may be uncertainty in the beginning, but clarity should grow with time. And here's the final thing I want you to remember. You don't become more valuable by making someone obsess over you. Your value was never dependent on how intensely another person thinks about you. The healthiest connection is not the one where you keep wondering whether he is secretly obsessed. It's the one where his actions gradually make his intentions easier to understand. So notice the signs, yes. Pay attention to patterns. But never abandon your own standards just because someone seems intensely interested. Let him show you. Let consistency speak. Let actions answer the questions that words sometimes cannot. And if these 8 signs are showing up together, then there may be a lot more happening beneath the surface than you initially realized. But don't chase the answer. Watch what he does next. That is where the truth usually becomes impossible to ignore. They'll tell their friends it's nothing serious. They'll tell themselves they're just spending time together. They'll convince themselves it's casual because admitting you're becoming a big deal means admitting that someone now has a real effect on them. It means admitting they actually care about what happens next. And a lot of guys don't like feeling that exposed until they're completely sure the connection is worth it. So the signs we're looking for aren't always about what a guy consciously chooses to do. They're about what he can't seem to stop himself from doing. The little things that slip through even when he's trying to stay calm and act like nothing is happening. The behaviors that reveal what's going on underneath whatever confident image he's trying to show you. These are the signs that can separate a guy who simply thinks you're attractive from a guy who's becoming deeply focused on you, even if he hasn't fully admitted it to himself yet. And the first sign is one almost nobody talks about. He becomes a little awkward around you instead of becoming smoother. Every dating tip tells you that if a guy wants you, he'll suddenly become confident, charming, and completely sure of what to say. But real life can look very different. When a guy starts genuinely wanting someone, he can become slightly awkward. Not in a terrible way. Not like he suddenly forgets how to function. It's more specific than that. He starts second-guessing himself. He may stumble over his words. He may pause before answering. He may suddenly seem unsure about how to act around you. And once you understand why, this behavior starts making a lot more sense. Here's what's happening inside his head, even though he would probably never say it directly. When you're simply someone he finds attractive, being around you can feel easy. He can joke around, he can say whatever comes into his mind. He doesn't spend much time wondering whether every little thing landed the right way. But when you become someone he genuinely wants, someone whose opinion starts carrying real weight, his brain can begin overthinking everything. A guy who's becoming deeply interested doesn't always speak as freely as he used to. He thinks before he talks. He wonders whether what he said sounded stupid. He may replay a conversation afterward and question his own words. Not because he's pretending to be someone else, but because you've become someone he really doesn't want to mess things up with. That's why many women misunderstand awkwardness. They see him acting nervous and assume he's losing interest. But don't stop at the awkward moment. Look at what happens around it. Is he still trying to talk to you? Does he stay nearby even when the conversation becomes uncomfortable? Does he continue coming back after saying something he thinks sounded foolish? Because someone who truly doesn't care usually doesn't keep making the effort. Someone who cares deeply may actually become more self-conscious because the outcome suddenly matters. Think about it this way. When something means nothing to you, you're usually relaxed about it. You don't spend hours thinking about how you looked or what you said, but when something matters, your mind becomes louder. You start analyzing. You become more careful. You notice every little reaction. So if a guy goes from being completely smooth with you to becoming slightly awkward, don't automatically assume he's pulling away. Sometimes he's simply feeling more than he knows how to manage. And here's the part most women miss about this kind of awkwardness. It can come and go. One day he'll seem completely normal. The next day he may suddenly act strange around you. That inconsistency can actually be part of the clue. When someone is becoming intensely interested, there are days when he can keep his emotions under control and days when you completely throw him off. Pay attention to those moments when he seems to be trying harder than usual. Watch when he suddenly loses his train of thought. Notice when he looks at you and seems to forget what he was about to say. Those little moments can reveal more than a perfectly rehearsed line ever could. They show the moments when his effort to stay composed isn't working quite as well as he hoped. And if you think that's interesting, wait until you notice what happens when other guys enter the picture. The second sign is that he starts behaving differently when other guys are around you. When a guy is only casually interested in someone, other men usually don't mean much to him. They're just other people. He may notice them, but he doesn't really care what they're doing. But when you become someone he's thinking about constantly, those same guys can suddenly stop feeling so random. They become people he notices, people he watches, people whose presence affects his mood even when nothing has actually happened. Pay attention the next time you're talking with another guy and he happens to be nearby. Does his energy suddenly change? Does he find a reason to join the conversation even though he wasn't involved before? Does he move a little closer? Does he suddenly become more talkative? Or does he become quieter while clearly paying attention to everything happening? These reactions don't automatically mean jealousy or prove that he's obsessed. Context matters. But if you repeatedly notice him becoming more alert whenever another guy gets your attention, it can show that your attention has become important to him. He's noticing things he normally wouldn't bother noticing. And that's the interesting part. His behavior may change before he even understands why. Here's what many guys won't admit: when they're only casually interested in someone, other guys don't really register as a problem. They're there, but they don't matter. However, when someone becomes emotionally important, seeing her give attention to another man can create a reaction. Suddenly, he notices who she's talking to. He notices how long the conversation lasts. He may become more present without even planning to. He might make a joke. He might suddenly start talking more. He might find an excuse to be nearby. Sometimes, he may even act completely unaffected while clearly paying attention. And the important thing here is not to turn every jealous reaction into something romantic. Healthy interest does not mean controlling behavior. You should never excuse possessiveness, disrespect, or attempts to control who you talk to. The clue is simply the shift in awareness. A guy who normally ignores what everyone else is doing may suddenly become very aware when someone else is getting your attention, and the stranger part is that he may not even like the fact that he's reacting. He may know he's being obvious. He may tell himself to calm down, but emotions don't always wait for permission. If you've become important enough in his mind, situations involving you can affect him in ways he never expected. And now we're getting to a sign that can be even harder to hide. The third sign is that he starts bringing you up in conversations that have absolutely nothing to do with you. Not in some dramatic way where he's constantly talking about you. It's much more subtle than that. He'll be talking with his friends and somehow your name enters the conversation. He'll tell a story and suddenly you're part of it. He'll see something random that reminds him of something you said and he mentions it. Maybe he'll hear a song, pass a restaurant, see a movie, or come across something online and suddenly connect it back to you. Here's what's happening when someone isn't really occupying your thoughts. You usually don't bring them up unless there's a clear reason. They're not part of every mental connection you make. But when someone becomes a major presence in your mind, your brain starts making connections automatically. One thing reminds you of another. A random moment brings back a conversation. Something you see reminds you of their personality. Suddenly, a person who isn't physically there keeps appearing in your thoughts anyway. That's why a guy who's becoming deeply focused on you may casually bring you into conversations without realizing how often he's doing it. And here's what makes this sign so interesting. He may not even know he's doing it. His friends might notice before he does. They may hear your name again and again, and eventually start teasing him about it. You might even hear something from one of them that surprises you. They may say, "You know, he talks about you a lot," while you're standing there thinking, "Really? He barely mentions me when I'm around." And that's the point. When you're there, he may be trying hard to act normal. He may deliberately avoid talking about you because he doesn't want to make his interest obvious. He wants to look relaxed. He wants to appear like everything is casual. But when you're not around, that effort disappears. He may talk more freely. He may tell his friends about something funny you said. He may mention a place you went together. He may bring up a detail about you that nobody expected him to remember. And suddenly his friends realize something he hasn't fully admitted yet. You are becoming a regular part of his mental world. So don't only watch how he behaves when you're standing directly in front of him. Sometimes the most revealing clues are the ones that appear when you're not even there. And if you keep listening closely, the people around him may accidentally reveal just how much space you've started taking up in his thoughts.